Hey, what's up? This your boy Big Man. You already know what it is, man. So let's get right to it. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about Krazy K and King Von. Now, Krazy K is the brother of KSoo. And if you don't remember, he's been on the run. Ever since there was a warrant for his arrest, there was like a federal bulletin that went out. And basically, the Federal Marshals Service was looking for KSoos Brother, Krazy K. Now, Krazy K's real name is Abdul Robinson Jr. And he's been on the run for a while, but it looks like the long arm of the law has finally caught up to him, and it was in Atlanta. Now, before we get to those specifics, we also want to talk about this whole King Von situation. Now, there was a recent Freedom of Information Act release, and it looks like they fingered King Von as the shooter in the KI shooting, or Gakirah. She was the topic of a well-known documentary that happened in 2019. And in the documentary, King Von also took a part. Like, he had a speaking role. And they're saying that King Von was also the killer or the shooter in that situation. And it's got the internet going crazy. Now, before we go through all of these details and talk about both of these issues, do me a favor. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. And man, let's get it. Okay, now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about this King Von situation, man. Now, there was a FOIA request, or a Freedom of Information Act request, that went through, and somebody downloaded the whole thing, the whole 300 pages of this request. Now, under these requests, you're allowed to get information that was partially subdued or information that wasn't released to the public due to something that's akin to a statute of limitation, right? Now, in this information, you find out a lot about the King Von situation with Gakirah. Now, for those of you who don't know, man, there was a situation that went down in Chicago way before King Von blew up even as a rapper, man. Now, there was a well-known documentary that came out in 2019, and I believe it was called Diary of a Gang Girl or something akin to that. And basically, it talked about Gakirah Barnes, right? Now, Gakirah Barnes was allegedly involved with a group that was in opposition to the group of King Von. Now, they're both mentioned throughout this FOIA request, and somebody even did their due diligence and pulled out some of the most important facts. And it's floating around all of the fan pages and a lot of the hip-hop blogs or whatnot. Now, in this, some of the things that you find out are kind of are a bit appalling, man. I'm not even gonna lie. Now, as somebody who's a King Von fan, it's still, man, kind of wild to see some of these stories that come out. But when you see the clear black and whites and the fact that they had pretty much King Von fingered as the trigger man in this situation, it's wild to say the least. Now, I'm going to scan through this document just a little bit and talk about it, but we're not going to breathe light to this whole document, man. Now, the finer points are when they talk about victim one being Gakirah Barnes, who was also called KI in the streets, right? Now, they mentioned that she's associated with a certain gang or whatnot, and they talk about her being pronounced dead and at what time it happened. Now, all of this goes back several years to 2014, I believe, man. Now, in 2014, they already believed that King Von was one of the people who was, one of the lead suspects in this investigation. But they had King Von, what they thought, fingered in a whole nother investigation involving a young man by the name of Malcolm Stuckey. Now, they thought they had King Von pretty much sewed up in that case, and even though they had two witnesses that testified that wrote statements that it was King Von who shot Gakirah and the two other people who were shot, because it wasn't just KI who was shot. There were two other people who were shot, but I believe they survived, even though it was, with limited injuries. One had sustained an injury to the foot, and I believe the other had a gunshot to the right knee. But Gakirah obviously took the brunt of the situation or was the one who lost their life. Now, what's wild is King Von basically, according to this paperwork, it looks like he walked on this situation. There were two witnesses and they still, they pushed this case to the side because they thought they had the Stuckey case. And then he beat that case as well. And this is what led pretty much to the legend of King Von. A lot of things, because a lot of people in Chicago and on a lot of the Chicago fan pages believe for a while there he was just running wild in the streets. Now, the cold part about this, and I gotta say this, even as a King Von fan, him being in that documentary in 2019, the what is it, documentary, The Diary of a Gang Girl. Like, why in the world would you go in there and perpetrate like you were trying to seek interest in her or trying to be like her boyfriend? That was the whole story he gave or whatever. And basically, according to this report, you're the alleged gunman in the situation. That's pretty cold, man. I'm not even gonna lie. That's pretty cold. That's pretty cold, man. But even in that interview, during that documentary, you could see one of the friends. She didn't want to say anything, but she kind of said that, when they brought King Von's name up, she was like, "Oh my gosh, like no, not at all." You know what I mean? So it's a wild story, and it kind of puts an end to the story of K.I. or Gakirah Barnes. Sad situation, gone too young, man. Horrible. Even though I know there's rumors on her end as well, man. Everybody akins her to the character Snoop from The Wire. So I know it's not a lot of super innocence and everybody's clean hands aren't clean in this situation. But when you consider the age of everybody involved, it's sad to say the least. Now, that's the last I'm going to talk about this, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this story. Now, let's talk about this KSoo situation with his brother. Now, some of you might not remember, but KSoo is locked up and he's pretty much fighting for his life in trial. He was actually looking at 2 murder cases, and he's still got 2 murder cases over his head right now. But there were some things that came out in court, man, and his lawyer was super vocal on social media. And he was talking about how the description of one of the shooters in the case where Lil Buck, who was a rapper from Jacksonville, was shot and killed, the shooter was actually described as being like 5'10", 170 or something like that. And KSoo is something like 6'2", 250 or something like that. Like, he's a big dude, man. He walks around like a football player or something like that. So it's hard to say that he was a suspect and arrest him and keep him locked up based on testimony from an eyewitness when he doesn't even match the description of the shooter that the eyewitness gave. Dig me? So his lawyer took to social media and was talking about that a lot, right? Well, immediately, once this was brought up in court, a federal bulletin went out looking for KSoos Brother and basically looking for somebody that matched the description because KSoos Brother is actually 5'10", 170. He matches the description of the shooter more than KSoo does, and this looks like KSoo was actually going to get this case off of him. Now, he's fighting a whole separate case where he allegedly shot and killed somebody close to Foolio, right? The rapper from Jacksonville named Foolio. And that case is still ongoing. But currently, he doesn't have a bond set, I believe, man. Unless there were any super changes since then, I think his bond is still, he doesn't have a bond set. So KSoo is looking and working and trying to get through this trial, and his brother name got brought up because of those details, right? Well, Krazy K has been on the run since like around March, man. Ever since the indictment came down and people were looking for him anyway, he was charged as an accessory in one of the shootings. He's been gone. Like, nobody can find him. Well, it looks like he turned up in Atlanta and it was arrested due to some work by the Atlanta police. So let's look at actually the arrest situation or the charges. Now, if you look, it says all the information for when he was booked was actually July 9th. Now, July 9th was only a few days ago, and it looks like he's been sitting ever since then. It looks like he hasn't been transferred either. They're probably waiting to transfer him. But the charges are listed under fugitive from justice, murder. So he had a federal marshal warrant for a fugitive from justice, and the charge is murder. So it looks like Krazy K is probably still gonna, be involved in that case, or maybe even looked at as the lead suspect in that situation. Now, up until now, that's all the information we have about the Krazy K situation. It's just that he's got locked up, and Fulton County actually has him. They're the ones who are detaining him at this time, and his information is on their website for everybody to see. Now, I don't know how this is going to play out for KSoo, but if one of these cases get taken up by his brother as the lead suspect, even though that sucks, man, that's got to suck for their father, Blue, because you got both of your sons fighting murder cases. You know what I mean? Even though it was alleged that he was involved in one of them, I think he already copped a plea deal, and he's just waiting to, whatever sentence that he's going to get in his plea. But, man, it looks like both of these cats going to be fighting for their freedom for a while. Now, what do you guys think about this situation? Do you think that Krazy K going on the run for that long hurt his situation and hurt the fact that he'll ever be able to, truly fight this? Or do you think the fact that Krazy K is caught up and now facing a murder charge actually helps KSoo in the long run? Now, with that, this has been your boy Big Man. Do me a favor. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. And make sure you hit that notification bell so that way you get a notification every time I drop this hot content. And we out of here. Peace.